The candle sputters low in the chill of the stone cell, and your breath fogs in the dark. Outside, frost grips the monastery walls like a claw refusing to release. The only sound is the scratch of a quill on parchment, your fingers stiff, your stomach hollow. You rose before dawn, knelt until your knees burned, and swallowed silence like bread. The world beyond these cloisters is loud, sinful, alive, but here you exist only to vanish. The abbey is not a refuge, but a grave carved slowly in time. You became a monk to save your soul, but you didn't know what it would cost your body. If this quiet ache of devotion stirs something in you, subscribe and tell me, could you have endured a life where suffering was seen as sacred? The morning mist curls like breath from the mouth of the earth, soft, silver, and cold. The wind carries the smell of frozen soil and smoke from distant chimneys, the kind that speaks of bread, of warmth, of lives still being lived just beyond these frost-bitten fields. But not for you, no longer for you. Your boots crunch across the hoarfrost as the monastery walls rise before you. Ancient, weather-stained, hunched like an old man against the sky. A bell tolls above, heavy and low, echoing across the valley like a slow heartbeat. Ora et labora, they say. Pray and work, but all you feel is the silence between. Welcome to the edge of the world. If this story opens something quiet in you, a door, a memory, a question, stay with me. Subscribe if you wish to walk deeper into the cold cloisters of forgotten lives. Could you have given up everything simply to be erased in silence? Tell me in the comments below. You arrive at the monastery gate with a satchel of wool, a heart swollen with uncertainty, and 17 winters behind you. The lay brother at the gate does not ask your name, only if you have come in earnest. You nod. It is enough. The gate opens inward with a groan that sounds older than time itself, and you step beneath the archway into a world where no birds sing, and no laughter carries on the wind. Your feet fall into rhythm with the silence. The courtyard is cobbled, and puddles glisten like dull coins scattered in the cracks. Crows shift on the rooflines. Ahead stands the prior, wrapped in a dark robe the color of ash. He does not greet you, not warmly, not coldly, but merely gestures for you to follow. You do. Inside, the air thickens with the scent of old stone and extinguished candles. Shadows linger like forgotten prayers. You pass under high arches, where echoes of footsteps have accumulated for centuries, and are brought to a small chamber, a cell, they call it, though no bars line the window, and the door is made of wood, not iron. You feel something in you close the moment it creaks shut behind you. The room is sparse, a narrow straw mattress on a wooden frame, a chipped bowl and jug, a small crucifix above a ledge. No fire burns here. Fire is for the flesh, and the flesh is not to be comforted. Your fingers begin to tremble from the chill, but you say nothing. Already you are learning. That night, you do not sleep. You lie awake, wrapped in a blanket worn thin by 1,000 winters, listening to the wind rattle the shutter, the faint tolling of a distant bell, the muttered chant of someone praying in the dark. Your stomach curls in on itself, not from hunger but from the absence of everything you knew. The noise of village life, the coarse laughter of your father, the rustle of your sister's skirts as she ran barefoot through the frost. All of it gone, and in its place, this silence, stone God. But what is God in this place? A question you dare not ask aloud. Before dawn, the bell tolls again, this time urgent, insistent, dragging you from your bed. You dress with frozen fingers. No one comes to fetch you, but somehow you know where to go. Down the hall, past the cloisters, into the chapel, where rows of hooded figures kneel in perfect stillness. You find a place among them. The stone beneath your knees is hard as penance, and colder than your breath. A voice begins the psalm, low and slow, and the others join like a tide rolling in. You do not know the words yet, but you close your eyes and hum with them, your voice a ghost among the others. After the service, there is no speaking, only gestures, a nod, a lowered gaze. You are led to the refectory, where a bowl of porridge, grey and steaming, waits. You eat in silence, eyes fixed on the grain of the wooden table. A reader recites from scripture in Latin, words flowing like water over stone. You understand almost nothing, but perhaps that is the point. In this place, understanding is not given. It is carved, slowly, into the soul. Later the prior meets you again, this time in a room where rules are written in ink, dark as blood. He reads to you from the rule of Saint Benedict, slowly, deliberately. Listen, my child, to the teachings of a master. Incline the ear of your heart. You try, you really do. That evening, back in your cell, your knees sore from kneeling, your throat dry from silence, you notice a spider spinning a web in the corner of the ceiling. It moves with purpose. It weaves without doubt. You envy it. And when the bell rings again, long after nightfall, calling you to matins in the dark, you rise, not because you want to, but because you no longer know how not to. In time, you will forget what day it is. You will forget the sound of your own name, and eventually, you will forget why you came. But not tonight. Tonight, you remember. You were 17, too young to understand renunciation, too old to turn back, and the bell still rings. The cloister is neither corridor nor courtyard. It is something between, something holy. The air within it is colder than outside, as if the stone itself hoards chill in its bones. You walk the length of it for the first time just after prime, the morning light barely cresting the walls. Each footstep falls like a whisper on the frost-laced flagstones, echoing gently beneath the arches. Around you, the world has narrowed into squares of silence. 4 walls, 4 seasons, 4 vows, poverty, chastity, obedience, and silence. This is where your life will unfold now, not in great acts of piety or visions of divine fire, but in repetition, in rising and kneeling and eating and praying and rising again, a wheel turning in time with God's breath. Your days begin before the sun dares to lift its face from the hills. You wake in darkness, shivering, pull your robe over aching limbs, and shuffle through half-seen halls to join the community in the chapel. There, the office of matins begins, chanted in unison. Your voice still quivers, uncertain in the unyielding Latin. The monks beside you seem carved from stone, unmoved, unblinking, unbroken. You wonder if they were ever young. As the sun begins to filter through the chapel's narrow windows, you join the line walking slowly through the cloister, each man spaced evenly, each gaze low. The air smells of cold wax and wet leaves. You pass the same walls, the same carved capitals of saints and beasts. Day after day, their faces do not change, but yours does, slowly. It is here, in the cloister, that you begin to feel the weight of the rule. Saint Benedict's words guide every breath, every bite, every blink. The rule is not a book. It is a net cast over your soul. It tells you when to sleep and when to wake, what to think, when to fast, how to pray, how to exist. It does not ask for obedience. It assumes it. You do not speak, not out of reverence, but because you are not allowed. The great silence holds from dusk till dawn, and often beyond. You may nod, you may gesture, but your voice remains folded in the back of your throat, like a forgotten cloth. You begin to feel yourself fading. Your thoughts echo louder than bells. You begin to count your own blinks, your own heartbeats, your own regrets. At night, when the straw rustles beneath you and the wind hums through the shutters, you remember voices, your mother calling you from the stream, your brother laughing at some shared secret. These memories sting like lashes. The other monks are quiet, but not absent. You begin to learn their rhythms. The old man with the crooked hands who always kneels longer than the rest. The brother who limps on his right foot and smells faintly of mint. The novice beside you, not much older than yourself, who clenches his fists during prayers. None of them speak to you, but they surround you like shadows. You are not alone, and yet lonelier than you have ever been. You are told to read the rule daily, so you do. Let us open our eyes to the deifying light. You read it in the scriptorium, your breath clouding over the pages. You run your fingers over the inked lines, over the margins smudged by generations of hands like yours. Some days it comforts you, the sense of order, of purpose, of eternity. Other days, it suffocates. At meals, you eat in silence while a reader recites the lives of saints. You try to listen, but your stomach grumbles and your mind drifts. You imagine the fields beyond the abbey wall, wet soil, the bleating of sheep, the scent of mud and manure, and freedom. But freedom is not salvation, they say, and salvation is bought with sacrifice. The prior passes by one day, as you are scrubbing the cloister stones. He pauses beside you, says nothing, only watches. You feel his gaze settle over you like a shroud. Then he walks on. That night, you dream of a bell tower crumbling, its stones falling soundlessly into darkness. You begin to understand that silence is not peace. It is a void. And in that void, your thoughts grow loud, your fears louder still. What if you are not strong enough? What if you never feel God's presence? What if you have traded your life for nothing but echoes? One afternoon, as the sun slips low beyond the chapel roof, you catch the eye of an older monk across the cloister. His face is lined like riverbeds in drought. He stares at you for a long moment, not unkindly, not cruelly, just tired. And in his eyes you glimpse something hollow, something long emptied. He has been here 20 years, they say, and he no longer remembers his own voice. You do not know whether to envy or fear him. That night, you kneel longer than you must. Not because you hope for an answer, but because you are afraid of what silence will tell you. And the wheel turns again. The bells rule all. You learn this quickly, not from a book or a sermon, but in your bones, your sleep, the very rhythm of your blood. Each bell peal slices through the hours with a blade of sound. It does not ask for your attention. It demands it. When it calls, you rise. When it calls, you kneel. When it calls, you chant, until your voice is nothing but another note in the long droning chorus of time. You did not know there were so many hours to be divided. Matins before dawn, lords as darkness recedes, prime at sunrise, then terce, sext, none, and after, vespers in the golden hush of evening. Finally, complain under the hush of stars. The bell does not sleep, and now neither do you. Matins begins in darkness. You rise from your straw mat in a room that has not known warmth in centuries. The stone is cold beneath your feet, cold even through the soles of your worn shoes. You dress in silence, robe over robe, woolen sleeves worn thin at the elbows. The candle flickers once, then steadies. It is not for light. It is a symbol of presence, of obedience, of surrender. The chapel looms like a cave. Shadows stretch high into ribbed vaults, and candlelight dances across the faces of stone saints. Frozen in eternal agony or bliss, the monks file in like shades. No footsteps, no greetings, no pause. You kneel beside them, your knees finding their old bruises. The psalter opens, the chanting begins. The psalms rise not as joy, but as labor. Voices chant with the slow inevitability of snowfall, syllables grinding through Latin verses written by men long since turned to dust. Domini, exordiation, mean, Lord, hear my prayer. But it is not a prayer from the heart. It is a function of breath, a duty of lips and tongue. You recite the words, not because you feel them, but because they must be said. No one speaks of devotion. Here, devotion is assumed. When the office ends, you return to your cell for an hour of rest. But sleep does not come. It is broken, scattered, a shallow thing. You lie awake, feeling the echo of the chant still clinging to your ribs. Then the bell calls again. Lord. The morning light is grey and reluctant, seeping in through the chapel's narrow glass. The windows are not coloured. There is no need for beauty, only light. You chant again, your voice raspy, your breath forming ghosts in the chill air. Hours pass. At prime, you read scripture aloud in the cloister, while others listen in silence. Your voice cracks midway through a verse, but you do not stop. Mistakes are noted silently, perhaps by God, perhaps by the prior. At terce, the bell rings just as you lift a spoon of watery soup to your lips. You set it down. You go. Hunger will wait. The hours grind you down, like water shaping stone. By sext, the sun hangs high, but offers little warmth. You labour in the garden, scraping frozen earth with a wooden tool. You sweat, even in the cold. A bell rings from the tower, and your muscles stop moving before your mind can command them. None comes with the lengthening of shadows. You return to the chapel. You chant again, knees to stone, back bowed, eyes closed. Vespers brings a strange stillness. The monks' voices blend in the golden hour light, low, resonant, echoing like wind through pinwood. For a moment, your heart stills, not in peace, but in surrender. You are no longer singing the psalm. The psalm is singing you. Compline is the final breath of the day. The chapel is dark once more. Only a few candles flicker. Their flames waver like thoughts at the edge of sleep. You kneel in your place. You hear the voices, weary now, but steady. You chant with them, not as a question, not even as a prayer, only as a rhythm. When the final amen is spoken, you return to your cell. Your knees are sore, your back aches, your voice is hoarse, but the hours have been kept. You lie down on the straw, body heavy, thoughts numb. The wind sighs through the shuttered window. You close your eyes, and even as you begin to drift, you know the bell will call again in just a few hours. It always does, because God's time does not sleep. And now, neither do you. The scent of the refectory is always the same. Old wood, boiled grain, and something faintly sour, like sweat baked into stone. You enter in silence, as you have been taught, eyes lowered, hands folded beneath your robe. The benches creak as the monks take their seats, but no voices rise, no one speaks. The only sound is the scrape of bowls across the table, and the soft cadence of the reader's voice, Latin words flowing steadily from the lectern like rain from a gutter. Your bowl is filled from a steaming pot, grey broth with beans, a crust of barley bread on the side. It smells bland. It tastes worse, but you eat it slowly, chewing as though every bite is an act of reverence. Because here it is. There is no meat. There never is. Saint Benedict forbids it for monks. A luxury of the flesh, a whisper of temptation. You have not tasted meat since entering these walls, and your body has noticed. You wake with hollowness beneath your ribs. Your skin clings closer to your bones. Your robes, once snug, now shift around your waist like sails without wind. Hunger becomes your quiet companion. Not a roaring hunger, but a persistent, humming ache, like the low toll of a bell that never ends. It sharpens your senses, draws your attention inward. Some say it purifies, some say it humbles. You are beginning to believe both. The monk beside you, Brother Ambric, eats slowly, his hands trembling from age or cold or both. He is gaunt, his eyes sunken deep into hollows, cheeks drawn like parchment over a skull, and yet when he finishes his meal, he bows his head and whispers a prayer of gratitude, his lips barely moving. You envy his peace. You envy his faith. Later that week, you are asked to help in the kitchen, a rare privilege, and one that brings with it a strange kind of torment. The cook, a wide-shouldered lay brother named Ruth, does not speak unless necessary. He stirs great pots of lentils and barley with a wooden paddle the size of an oar. You carry sacks of beans, scrub vegetables, peel onions until your eyes sting. Sometimes you are given scraps, the withered end of a carrot, the burnt edge of a crust. You savor them in private, like stolen treasure. Guilt follows each bite, but so does a strange joy. Hunger, after all, is not just punishment here. It is a form of prayer. On Fridays, the meals are smaller still. Fasting days, you eat barely enough to quiet the ache. And yet, the monks do not complain. Some even smile. Brother Cedric, young, pale, with lashes like frost, once leaned toward you after Vespers, and whispered, "The hungrier the belly, the fuller the soul." He said it with such certainty you almost believed it. But at night, as you lie on your straw mattress with your hands folded over your hollow stomach, you dream not of saints or psalms, but of your mother's kitchen. You see a pot bubbling on the hearth. You smell leeks, beef, garlic, thyme. You see her turn, laugh, stir with a spoon carved by your father's hand. You wake with tears on your cheeks and the taste of memory on your tongue. You are not supposed to long for the world, but the world has not yet stopped longing for you. One evening, during a rare moment in the garden, you find Brother Ambric sitting beneath a leafless tree, his hands clasped as though in prayer. You sit beside him. He opens his eyes, slow and heavy. "Did you ever get used to it?" you ask softly, unsure if he'll permit speech. He considers this. "You never stop feeling hunger," he replies. "You just learn to offer it." "Offer it to what?" He looks up, toward the sky, pale blue, rimmed with dusk, to the silence. You don't understand. Not yet, but something in his voice settles into you like a seed in cold earth. Over time, the fasting deepens. Lent arrives, and with it, a stricter abstinence. You eat once a day. Your limbs grow slower, your thoughts sharper and stranger. You begin to see patterns in the stone walls, hear melodies in the rustling of straw. It becomes difficult to separate the ache of the stomach from the stirrings of the soul. Some days you believe the hunger is holy. Other days, it simply hurts. You lose weight, not just from your body, but from your mind. Memories slip. You forget the names of neighbors, the color of your sister's eyes, the slope of the hills beyond your village. Hunger does not just strip the flesh, it strips identity, and this too, they say, is sacred. You wonder, is forgetting the world the only way to find God? The bell rings again. Another hour, another office, another chant. You rise. Your stomach growls. You do not silence it. You let it sing. The scriptorium smells of dust, beeswax, and old breath. It is both a tomb and a womb, a place where language dies in silence and is reborn in ink. You are sent there after Lords, as winter's shadow still clings to the corners of the sky. Your boots echo against the stone floor as you enter, though no one looks up. Rows of monks sit hunched at long wooden desks, their forms cloaked in brown and grey like tree trunks in a lifeless forest. The only sounds are quills scratching parchment, and the soft wheeze of breath from tired lungs. A young monk named Brother Etienne leads you to an empty seat. He is pale and thin, with ink permanently stained along his cuticles. He gestures toward your tools, a knife for scraping vellum, a reed quill, a horn of ink, a blotter. No words are exchanged. The scriptorium does not allow words. You sit. The bench is hard and unforgiving. The vellum before you is yellowed, rough at the edges, the skin of a calf stretched and cured long ago. Your task is simple. Copy, not interpret, not understand, only replicate. Perfectly. You begin with a capital letter I. The initial must be large, ornamented. You copy it from the template like a child tracing his own shadow. Your hand shakes, the ink pools. You curse silently, then scrape the mistake away with your knife. Careful not to tear the skin. Mistakes are punishable. The rule is clear. Brother Etienne glances over, his expression unreadable. You lower your eyes and begin again. The hours stretch, slow as melting wax. Your fingers grow stiff from cold and tension. Your back hunches, your neck aches, your eyes blur. Still, you write. Psalm after psalm, gospel after gospel. The Latin lines curve and loop like vines across the page. You do not understand half of what you write. It does not matter. The words are not for you. They are for God. At midday, the bell rings. The scribes rise. You follow them in silence to the refectory. A meal is taken, barley stew as always. Then you return to your seat. No rest, no reprieve. In time, the scriptorium becomes a world of its own. The windows are high and narrow, letting in slats of pale light that shift across the desks as the sun creeps by. Dust floats in golden beams. Time here is not measured by clocks, but by progress across the page. A line, a page, a chapter, a life. Brother Guy sits to your left, an older monk, once a carpenter before he took the cowl. You heard whispers that he lost his family in a fire. Now he copies sermons, slowly, meticulously. Some days you see tears staining the vellum beneath his quill. He does not wipe them. He keeps writing. Sometimes you glimpse the older texts. Not copies, but originals. Faded manuscripts from centuries past. Ink barely visible. Margins covered in strange symbols. You wonder who wrote them. Whether they, too, felt this slow unraveling of the self. Whether they, too, forgot the sound of their own laughter. You begin to develop a rhythm. Wet the quill, trace the stroke, blot the ink, scrape the slip, begin again. It becomes almost meditative, a trance within the labor. The act of writing becomes prayer, not because you feel closer to God, but because it is the only thing anchoring you to yourself. One evening, as Vespers ends, and the light dies from the sky, Brother Etienne lingers beside your desk. He watches your hand move across the page. Then, in a voice so low it might not exist, he murmurs, "Careful with your wrist. You'll lose the line." You glance up. For a moment you think he might smile. But he doesn't. He turns and walks away. You leave the scriptorium with your joints locked and your hands stained black. You wash them in the freezing water basin, but the ink remains, embedded in the creases of your skin. You stare at your reflection in the basin, pale, hollow-eyed, older than your years. You touch your cheek. You do not recognize yourself. That night, you dream of pages folding endlessly, one into the next, until they swallow you whole. In the morning you return to your desk. The page waits, blank and expectant, and you begin again. It happens quietly, without warning. You are raking the cold embers from the kitchen hearth after sext, hands red and raw, when it arrives sudden, uninvited and blinding. A laugh. Not a holy laugh, not the dry exhale of a monk suppressing joy, but a real one, bright, female, alive. It cuts through your thoughts like sunlight through a shutter crack. And in that instant you remember her. She is not named in the rule. She has no place in your new world. But her memory slips in anyway, not with a scream but a whisper. You remember her voice, warm with mischief, her braid falling over one shoulder, the way she once threw a pebble at your back in the orchard, and how you turned, startled, to find her smiling. You were 13. She was the blacksmith's daughter. She smelled of ash and apple. You lean against the hearth, the iron poker in your hand, suddenly too heavy. Your throat tightens. You squeeze your eyes shut. But the memory lingers, vivid and full, blooming like a forbidden flower in the garden of your mind. Later that evening, during compline, your lips form the sacred verses, but your thoughts drift. They do not belong to God tonight. They belong to her. The rule teaches that memory must be purified, the imagination bridled like a beast, but the mind does not bow as easily as the body. You begin to fear the shapes your thoughts might take when the silence deepens. That night, you sleep restlessly. You dream of her again, not in sin, not in longing, but in presence. She sits beside you beneath a linden tree, sunlight dappling her face. You do not speak, you only look, and when you wake, your hands are clenched around the blanket, your cheeks wet. You confess it the next morning. The confessor is old, narrow-eyed, with skin like burnt parchment. You kneel before him in the dim corner of the chapel, and whisper the truth. I remembered her. He does not flinch. He has heard it before. Many times. His voice is dry. Memory can sin, as surely as the tongue. You nod, ashamed. You will fast tomorrow. Bread and water only. And pray, Psalm 51, 7 times. In silence, you bow. Yes, Father. But when you rise, the memory has not gone. It has only softened, become less a sharp ache, more a warm ember, buried deep. You eat little that day, water and bread. Your stomach churns, your head grows light. Still, you pray. The psalm becomes a chant beneath your breath. Create in me a clean heart, O God. But your heart is not clean. It is cluttered with faces, smells, places. Not all of them holy. During Terce you see a sparrow land on the windowsill of the cloister. Its feathers ruffle in the breeze. For a moment you envy it, not for its freedom, but for its forgetfulness. You wonder what it means to live without memory, without temptation. You think of Brother Guy in the scriptorium, the tears he does not wipe away. You think of Brother Ambrick's eyes, hollowed by years of obedience. You begin to suspect that no one here is free from memory, only quieter about it. That night, during the great silence, you lie awake in your cell. The wind moans through the shutter cracks. Your stomach is empty. Your body aches. And yet, you feel strangely full, not with food, but with something else. Something dangerous. You rise from your straw and kneel by the small, wooden cross on the wall. Your breath fogs before you. You fold your hands. I am trying, you whisper. I am trying to forget. But the silence offers no answer. And in your heart, her laughter rings on. The whip is kept in a drawer, behind the vestry wall. You see it for the first time after Vespers, a coil of knotted leather, frayed at the ends like a snake that's chewed its own tail. Brother Cedric shows it to you with no ceremony. He unrolls it slowly, reverently, then folds it again. No words pass between you. None are needed. The meaning is clear. Flagellation is not required. Not officially. It is offered as penance, as devotion, as discipline. A gift. That's what they call it. A gift of suffering, willingly returned to the God who suffered first. You are not told to take the whip, but you are watched. The first time you witness it, the night is black and bitter. The The snow has hardened into crusts along the cloister walls, and the moon casts a silver bar across the floor. You wake to the faint sound of movement, not chanting, not the bell, but something ragged. You slip from your cell, feet wrapped in cloth, and follow the sound. In the cold courtyard, behind the chapel, 4 figures kneel in a circle. Their robes are bunched around their waists, their backs bare and pale under the stars. They do not speak. They do not cry out. One lifts the whip, the sound of it cracking through the air, then striking flesh, is like fire splitting wood. Another follows, then another. Each monk lashes himself with a rhythm shaped by prayer. Between strikes, they whisper fragments of psalms. Their breaths cloud in the frigid dark. Blood glistens, thin and red, across ridged spines. You watch from the shadows, heart frozen. The next day, you find a slip of parchment tucked into the psalter on your desk. It contains a single line, in a hand you recognize. Mortify your members which are upon the earth. Colossians. That evening, after compline, you do not return to your cell. You go instead to the vestry, where the whip waits. Your hands tremble as you unroll it. The leather is stiff with age, but flexible enough to coil into your palm. You kneel before the crucifix. Not the one in the chapel, but the smaller one. Behind the storage alcove, a broken Christ hangs there, carved from dark wood, his ribs stark, his face serene. You take a breath, another, then lift your arm. The first strike surprises you, not for the pain, but for the silence. There is no thunderous ache, no righteous clarity, only sting, and the sound of your own breath tightening. The second strike bites deeper, you grit your teeth. The third lands across your shoulder, where the skin is thin. A warmth blooms there, blood, perhaps, or something older. You whisper a prayer as you strike again, not for forgiveness, but for meaning. Pain becomes a rhythm. You do not count the lashes. You count the breaths between them. When you finish, you are shaking, not from agony, but from stillness. You clean the whip, fold it, and return to your cell with your robe sticking to your back. No one speaks of it the next day, but they see it in your walk, in the careful way you sit, in the way your gaze drops lower. Brother Cedric nods to you in passing. For the first time you feel part of something unspoken. In the days that follow, your dreams shift. You no longer dream of her. No linden trees, no apples, no laughter. You dream instead of thorns pressing into skin, of wind sweeping across an open wound, of a silent God watching from a height you cannot reach. You dream of the whip, not with fear, but with longing. You begin to understand what they mean when they say pain is a kind of prayer, because when the flesh is punished, the spirit floats free, and in that release, however fleeting, you almost believe you are holy. Winter thickens, slowly, like a shadow drawing breath. It seeps into the walls of the abbey with icy fingers, curling beneath doors and sliding down from rafters to settle into your bones. Each morning, the water in the wash basin bears a thin skin of ice. You crack it with your fingers, wincing as the cold stings open your flesh. You splash your face, not to wake, but to obey, and obedience is warmth enough. The sky remains colourless for days, pale grey, then iron grey, then nearly black. Even at noon, snow falls, softly without sound, piling in corners of the cloister, covering statues of saints in robes of silence. You do not speak of the cold, no one does. To acknowledge suffering here is to show a fracture, and fractures weaken the whole. You add another robe, wrap your feet in cloth. Still, you shiver. The chapel is no refuge. Its stone floor is colder than the grave. You kneel there 7 times a day, and once before dawn, when the world is still unformed, and the stars linger like forgotten dreams. The candles flicker and sway in the draught. The monks chant slowly, breath visible in the air, like the ghosts of their prayers. The psalms do not change, but your voice does. It grows hoarse, brittle, a rasping thread woven into the fabric of chant. Have mercy upon me, O God. You sing, lips cracked, throat aching, according to thy loving kindness. The winter takes its toll in small, unnoticed ways. A monk slips on the frozen cloister stones and bruises his spine. Another develops a cough that worsens in the nights. Brother Umbric begins to nod during prayers, his head dipping lower, his hands trembling more with each passing day. No one asks if he is unwell. Suffering is not questioned here. It is sanctified. The kitchen fire burns low, rationed carefully. The meals grow thinner. Lentil stew becomes boiled barley. Barley becomes broth. Bread hardens. Your stomach grumbles loudly in the refectory, earning you a glance from the prior. You bow your head. You chew slower. Then, in the second week of Advent, Brother Lucien does not rise from his bed. He is old, older than anyone remembers. His cell is a narrow slit in the eastern wing, filled with the scent of herbs and dried sweat. You are asked to fetch water for him. When you arrive, he is lying with his mouth slightly open, eyes fluttering. His hands are blue at the knuckles. He does not speak. You lift his head and pour a trickle of water onto his tongue. That night, the bell tolls twice. Slowly, solemnly, a death knell. No one weeps. After Compline, you watch as his body is carried to the graveyard beyond the abbey wall. The snow has crusted over the earth. It must be broken with spades. The monks dig in silence, robes fluttering in the wind, their hands red and raw. Lucien is wrapped in linen. No coffin, no hymn, just a prayer, barely audible over the wind. In paradisum deducant te angeli, and then, one of the younger monks, Brother Matteo, lowers his head. You hear him sniff once, sharply. He wipes his eyes before anyone sees. You don't cry, but your hands won't stop shaking. The next morning, Matins continues as before. The same psalm, the same stone floor, the same cold. The chapel has one fewer voice, but the liturgy does not falter. You begin to understand. Winter is not just a season here. It is a sacrament, a stripping away of comfort, of memory, of warmth. It tests the spirit's endurance, and for those who pass, or perish, it is counted as grace. During none, snow begins to fall again. Thick, wet flakes that cling to your cowl as you move between buildings. You do not brush them off. You let them melt into the fabric. That night, as the monks file into the chapel for Compline, you glance at the empty space where Brother Lucien once knelt. No one looks, but the cold feels deeper, and the chant, slower. You close your eyes, fold your hands, and whisper the words once more into the darkness. The traveller arrives on a morning veiled in mist, just as prime ends, and the monks file silently through the cloister. His robes are the same colour as the mud clinging to his boots, brown, but not Benedictine. His beard is long, his eyes bright and strange, like fire buried in ash. He carries no parchment, no seal of blessing, only a walking stick and a satchel slung low across his back. He calls himself Brother Aldrich, a lay brother on pilgrimage. He bows deeply to the prior, asks for shelter for a night, perhaps two. His Latin is careful, formal, but his gaze lingers too long on the stained glass of the chapel. His questions press too close to the rule. He is granted one night. You are assigned to show him the guest chamber. He thanks you softly as you walk, and you notice he limps slightly. The gait of a man who has walked too far too long, yet keeps walking. You open the door to the small stone room. A simple cot, a crucifix, a jug of water. He smiles and touches the wood of the cross gently, like an old friend. That night, he does not attend Compline. The monks notice, but no one says a word. After prayers, as you return to your cell, you pass the garden. He is there, sitting beneath the bare branches of the elder tree, watching the stars through the mist. You hesitate, then approach. He glances up. You sleep poorly, he says, as if it were a fact, not a question. You say nothing. He pats the stone beside him. You sit. For a long moment, neither of you speaks. The wind stirs the leaves. A barn owl calls from the rafters. Then, quietly, he says, "The Psalms are beautiful, but do you ever wonder if they are enough?" You turn to him. His face is calm. There is no rebellion in it, only weariness. "I mean," he continues, "do you ever feel God in the silence? In the trees? In the firelight of a stranger's home?" You answer without thinking, "God is in the raw." He chuckles. Not mocking, not cruel. Just tired. Perhaps. But he is also in the wild places. In the voices Rome forgot. There were saints before the bishops, you know. Holy men who wandered barefoot through forests, who prayed with their hands in the soil. You glance toward the chapel tower. That is not our way. No, he says. It isn't. He reaches into his satchel and pulls out a small book. Not parchment, but paper thin, curling, inked in a hand you don't recognize. He opens to a page and holds it out. You hesitate. But you do. The words are soft, strange, a prayer to a God who sings in rivers, who weeps with widows, who walks barefoot across the threshold of homes where no candles burn. It does not feel wrong, but it does not feel allowed. You hand the book back. Brother Aldrich watches you for a moment, then says, "Faith doesn't need walls, you know. Sometimes the closer you draw the lines, the further God slips away." You stand. "You shouldn't be here." You whisper, "You shouldn't say such things." He nods. "I know." You return to your cell, the floorboards groaning beneath your feet, but the silence no longer comforts you. It rings too loudly now, like a bell calling from inside your chest. At dawn, Brother Aldrich is gone. No goodbyes. No thanks. No footprints in the frost. Only the book remains, hidden beneath your straw mattress. You open it once, just once, then bury it deeper. Later that day, the abbot addresses the monastery during sext. His words are cold and precise. Not all who wear robes serve God. Some carry rot behind their smiles. If any brother has heard words not sanctioned by the church, he must confess. At once, no one speaks. The bell rings. The day continues. But something has shifted. A flame was lit in the silence. Brief, flickering, perhaps already extinguished. But you still feel its warmth, and wonder what it might yet burn. The garden lies behind the east cloister, where the wind slows and the sun, when it chooses to appear, lingers longest on the stone. It is not large, a few beds of winter cabbage, tangled herbs, frost-blackened vines, but it is quiet, blessedly so. Here, the silence is different, not forced, not filled with the weight of rules, just stillness. You are assigned to assist Brother Anselm, the gardener. He is older than most, with hands like twisted roots and eyes cloudy but unblinking. He speaks rarely, and when he does, his voice is soft as if saving strength for something deeper than speech. The first morning you join him, he hands you a trowel and nods toward the earth. No talking, he murmurs, just listening. You kneel and begin to dig. At first the work is dull. Your fingers ache in the cold. The soil resists. Roots cling to the frost-hardened ground, like ghosts unwilling to rise. You scrape and plant and water in silence, the rhythm slow and repetitive, and strangely soothing. After several days, something shifts. You begin to hear the garden. Not voices, exactly, but textures. The whisper of dried leaves brushing one another, the sigh of a shovel sinking into loam, the soft snap of frozen stalks giving way. It becomes its own language, quiet, ancient, whole. Brother Anselm teaches without speaking. He shows you how to crush rosemary between your fingers to awaken its scent, how to wrap thyme in cloth and hang it over steam to ease a cough. He shows you where the mint grows even in winter's grip. Small, defiant shoots, rising through last year's death. He calls it the stubborn herb. You remember that. One morning he presses a sprig of sage into your palm. Good for wounds, he says. And remembering, you nod, though you don't yet understand what he means. The garden becomes a refuge. After prayers, after the cold stone of the chapel, and the aching chants of lauds and vespers, you step into it like stepping back into the world. You still work in silence, still observe the rule, but your thoughts are different here. Lighter, quieter, the sharpness of your hunger softens. The shadows of your dreams fade. You begin to smile, not often, and never, when watched. But sometimes, as you plant a row of winter leeks or brush snow from the parsley, you feel something flutter in your chest. Not joy, perhaps, but the faint memory of it. One afternoon, Brother Anselm breaks the silence more deliberately. You remind me of a boy I knew, he says. Not looking at you, he used to sing to the carrots, swore it made them sweeter. You glance at him uncertain. He died, Anselm adds. Before the war ended, they found him with his prayer book still open, page torn by the wind. You say nothing. What could you say? But you think of him, the boy who sang to carrots, and later you catch yourself humming as you weed the edge of a bed. Just once. just a note, but it startles you. That night you lie awake and realize that this garden, this square of earth inside the cloister, is the only place where you still feel human. Not a vessel, not a rule-following shadow, just you. But joy is dangerous here. You remember the traveller, his words, his book, the look in his eyes when he spoke of God in the wild places. You have not opened the book again? But sometimes, when Brother Anselm isn't watching, you press your hand to the soil and imagine what it would feel like to walk barefoot through a forest, to feel pine needles under your heels, to sleep beside a river with no bells to wake you. You do not pray for escape, but you begin to dream of green things, living things, things that grow without permission. One morning Brother Anselm gives you a small cloth pouch filled with dried lavender. For your cell, he says. The cold smells better that way. You take it, bare your head, murmur thanks. That night, you tuck it beneath your straw, and dream, for the first time in weeks, not of death, but of spring. It begins with dreams that won't let go. Not nightmares, not visions, but strange, stirring scenes that wake you with your heart thudding and the covers tangled around your limbs. You rise in darkness, the bell still hours away, your mouth dry, the walls of your cell too close. You light a stub of candle and sit with your back against the stone, trying to calm your breath. The silence is oppressive. Not the sacred hush of Compline, but something denser, like a shadow with weight. You feel the echo of her laughter again, though it has faded to a whisper now. You think of the garden, the traveller's book, the whip in the vestry, the names you no longer speak aloud. You feel too full. So you rise, you wrap yourself in your robe, step barefoot into the corridor, and walk slowly into the cloister where moonlight spills like milk across the stones. You are not alone. A figure stands in the courtyard, half lit by the stars. Young, slight, unmoving. For a moment you fear it is a vision, a punishment sent to frighten you back into sleep. But then he turns. It is Brother Matteo. You have never heard his voice before. He steps toward you, robe pulled tight. His breath clouds the air. I couldn't sleep, he says, barely louder than the rustling leaves. You nod. He looks at you, uncertain. Do you walk sometimes? You nod again. He exhales. May I? You walk the cloister together, slowly, silently. For several laps you speak no words. Then, a whisper. I dreamt of the sea, he says, though I've never seen it. You glance at him. He's barely 20. His eyes shimmer in the half-light. Was it beautiful? Yes, he says, smiling faintly. Terrifying. I think God might live there. You want to ask more, but the moment passes. Another night. A week later you find him again. This time, he brings a candle. You sit on the cold steps, outside the scriptorium, huddled against the wind. He asks if you remember music. You tell him you do. He hums a melody, ancient, soft, wrong in this place, but beautiful. You recognize it, a harvest song. You hum the harmony. The notes barely form before you silence yourselves, breathless, afraid, but you smile. The next night, he tells you his sister used to sing it. She died 2 winters ago, he says. Typhus. He says the night he heard her last breath was the night he promised God his voice. I thought giving him my voice would save something, that it would make sense of the grief. You do not speak. Only press your shoulder gently to his. A week later you speak in return. You tell him about her, the blacksmith's daughter, how she made you laugh, how you still smell apples sometimes when you kneel to pray. He listens. In the chapel, during Lauds, you do not look at each other. You do not speak. You kneel as all the others do, sing as all the others sing. But your voices find each other in the chant, subtle, steady. One night he asks, do you think God hears us more when we are silent? You think of the bell tower, the rule, the psalms, I think he hears us when we are honest, you reply. Matteo's eyes fill with tears. He wipes them away quickly. You pretend not to see. A month passes like this, with whispers in the dark, with dreams shared and names remembered, with laughter buried in cupped hands. But joy here has edges. One night, the prior walks past the cloister during your quiet exchange. You do not see him, but you feel something change in the air. The next morning, you are not punished. Nothing is said. But Matteo is reassigned to the laundry, far from your path. Your glances are brief now, fleeting as candle smoke. You walk the cloister alone again, but you remember what it felt like, just for a moment to be known. And in your dreams you still hear him hum. It happens without thought, without intent. A single word caught like breath between ribs, released before you even realize it's been spoken. You are in the refectory, seated on the long bench beneath the shadow of the crucifix, spooning thin lentil broth into your mouth, while the voice of Brother Laurent drones above you, reciting from the lives of the Desert Fathers. The room is filled with the hush of eating, the scrape of bowls, the soft exhale of steam from bread too dry to chew. You listen, you chew, you try, as always, not to and then a monk spills his cup. The clay tumbles, cracks, and water spills across the table, soaking into the wood like blood into cloth. The sound startles you, sudden, sharp, unnatural. You flinch, and you say, without meaning to, "Ah, just that." One syllable, barely a whisper, but it is enough. Silence falls heavier than before, all movement arrested mid-bite. Eyes lift, heads turn, a breath caught in 100 throats. You lower your gaze at once, heat rising to your cheeks. The prior looks at you from the head of the table, not with fury, not even disappointment, just finality, as if this had always been waiting. No punishment is spoken aloud. None ever is, but you are summoned after compline. The prior waits for you in the chapter house, where judgments are handed down in the light of one tall candle. He does not sit. He stands with his hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the flagstone floor. "You have broken silence," he says. Not in speech, but in impulse. You say nothing. There is no defense. The voice, he continues, is not evil, but it is power, and power must be contained. He steps closer. 3 days in solitude, no work, no communion, no voice, no eye. You bow. Your cell door is shut from the outside that night. The latch is heavy. You are given water, a crust of bread, nothing else. The hours pass slowly, marked only by the distant bells you can no longer follow. You do not join the prayers. You do not chant the psalms. You do not hear your brothers' voices. The silence is now total, not just absence, but exile. At first you sleep, you fast, you whisper prayers against the wall. Then you begin to hear things. The creak of beams in the ceiling becomes a groan. The wind through the shutter becomes a scream. Your breath becomes thunder in your own ears. You try to pray louder, but your lips do not move. By the second day you speak to the crucifix, not in sin but in need. You ask him if he hears you. He does not answer. You remember Matteo, humming in the dark. You remember Brother Aldrich's book, buried beneath your straw. You remember laughter, hunger, the smell of lavender, and rosemary. You remember your own name. You say it aloud, once, softly, just to be sure you still can. By the third day, you do not weep. You do not speak. You do not pray. You simply wait. And when the door finally opens, when the light stabs into your eyes and the prior gestures for you to rise, you step into the hall like a man rising from a grave. No one looks at you. No one welcomes you back. You return to the cloister and take your place in the procession of silence. But something has changed. The silence now feels heavier, because you know what it costs to break it, and what it costs to keep it. The ashes are cold as they touch your brow, a faint smear from thumb to skin, crumbling against your forehead like the dust from old vellum. The abbot's voice is steady as stone. "Remember, man, that thou art dust, and unto dust thou shalt return." He speaks the phrase to each monk in turn, but it strikes you differently this year, not like a warning, but a reminder of something you've already begun to feel deep in your marrow. The chapel is silent. The smoke from the candles rises in soft spirals, as though it too has begun its slow ascent to nothing. Winter clings still to the corners of the monastery, and the morning air tastes like iron and ash. Lent has come, and with it, the great emptying. Your fast deepens. 1 meal a day, no flesh, no fat, no warmth. Water and bread, sometimes beans, sometimes nothing. The rule prescribes it, the soul requires it, and yet your body resists. Your limbs are sluggish, your stomach contracts with a hollow ache, and your dreams are filled not with visions, but with the smell of roasting meat and warm cider. You kneel longer now. You chant lower. You sleep less. On the second day of Lent, you collapse during Lauds. Not fully, not a dramatic fall, just a soft slump, your knees buckling, your vision swimming as the cold stone floor rises up to greet you. 2 monks lift you wordlessly, return you to your cell. No questions, no scolding, only a thin bowl of barley broth left by your door at dusk, cooling in the dark. You drink it slowly. Each mouthful feels like guilt. By the 4th day, your thoughts begin to drift from your flesh entirely. You move like mist through the cloister, float through the hours like a ghost. The bells sound distant, like echoes in a deeper cavern. You watch the monks around you, sunken eyes, pale skin, lips moving in endless prayer. You wonder if they feel the same hunger, not of the body, but of meaning, of connection. Brother Anselm, the gardener, is absent from his plot. You ask another monk, a glance, a small gesture, and are told he's taken to his cell, his joints swollen and breath thin. You kneel in the chapel and whisper a psalm for him. Not from obligation, but from something close to love, and still the hunger sharpens. You do not fear it now. You welcome it. On the 7th day, your feet bleed, where the straps of your sandals have rubbed against skin worn thin. You do not bandage them. You walk slower. You whisper, as you walk, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean." But you do not feel clean. You feel hollow. And that hollow, for the first time, begins to feel like home. One evening, as you light the single candle in your cell, you look into its flame and see not fire, but longing. Not for food, not for warmth, but for something beyond naming. A touch, perhaps. A voice. A glimpse of grace. You lie on your mat, curled around the lavender pouch. Brother Anselm gave you weeks before. It still holds its scent, faint but present. You close your eyes. The chant from Vespers still echoes in your skull. You wonder if this too is prayer. This ache, this emptiness, this quiet ache for something more. Ash Wednesday passes into Thursday, then Friday, then Sunday. Each day, the ashes remain. Not visible, but in your joints, in your hunger, in the silence between breaths. You are dust, and dust is holy, if only you could believe it. The coughing begins softly, just a clearing of the throat at first, small, restrained, almost polite, but it grows, deeper, sharper, until one night it echoes through the stone halls like footsteps in a crypt. Brother Lucian, you know his name before anyone speaks it. Everyone does. He has been here longer than the bells themselves, it seems. His voice always a beat behind the chant, his kneeling slow, but precise. He was once a scholar, they say, a monk who copied not only scripture but philosophy, poetry, letters from saints whose names have long turned to dust. Now he lies in his cell, wrapped in wool and fever. You are chosen to care for him, not out of trust, but because the others are needed elsewhere. You, still young, still able to carry, to tend, to sit without sleeping, are summoned by the prior with a quiet nod. You enter his cell for the first time at dusk. The room is dim, lit by a single stub of tallow, its flame dancing against the damp, flaking walls. Brother Lucien lies on his cot beneath layers of linen and rough-woven cloth. His skin is pale, tinged with blue at the lips, and sweat clings to his forehead like dew on iron. He opens one eye as you enter. So he whispers, voice like dry leaves. "You've come to watch me go." You kneel beside him. "I've come to serve," you say. He chuckles, then coughs. A deep, tearing sound. You pour water into a wooden cup and lift it to his lips. He sips slowly. His hands tremble as he steadies the cup. Over the next days, time folds around that room. You change his linens, wipe his brow, help him sit when he has the strength. Feed him broth, sip by sip, though most of it runs back down his chin. He sleeps often, shallow, broken sleep, muttering in Latin, and sometimes weeping in silence. Once, while wiping his hands, you notice a scar that runs the length of his palm. He sees you looking. "I was not always gentle," he murmurs. He does not explain. Another night, when the fever ebbs slightly, he speaks more clearly. "Did you know," he says, "that I once danced, before I came here, at a harvest festival? I held a girl's hand under a full moon. You stare. She had teeth like pearls, he says, smiling faintly, and a voice like the wind through barley. His eyes close. But I was afraid of joy. I thought it would damn me. He sleeps again. You sit with his words for hours. The next day he asks for music. You hesitate. I know it's forbidden, he whispers, but just hum. Something from before. You glance at the doorway, the narrow stone hall beyond. Then you hum. A slow, old song. A cradle tune. One your mother sang once. Long ago. Brother Lucian smiles. Tears slip down his cheeks. Thank you, he says. The night he dies. The sky is clear. The moonlight spills through the shutter slats, bathing the floor in silver. He reaches for your hand, bony, frail, and grips it weakly. Don't forget to live, he whispers. Even here, especially here. His breath rattles once more. Then stop. You sit beside him long after he has grown cold. You light the candle again. Wash his hands. Close his eyes. The bells do not toll that night, but something inside you does. The book arrives unbound. Just pages, vellum sheets stacked in a wooden tray, each whispering as your fingers turn them. Pale gold from calfskin, smooth as wind-worn stone. The ink glistens in the margins, black iron gall mixed with wine, thick strokes that have not yet fully dried. The prior himself assigns the task to bind a new book of hours, a sacred duty, a quiet trust. You do not speak, you only bow. The scriptorium is colder now. Winter is retreating, but the stone holds chill in its heart. Light pours in through the tall windows like a slow hymn. You sit at your bench, the loose pages before you, tools at hand, bone folder, awl, thread, wax, cloth. This is not copying, this is making, this is assembling something meant to endure. Each page is a breath of centuries, hours of the Virgin, hours of the Cross, hours of the Holy Spirit, prayers for waking, for sleeping, for dying, the rhythm of the monastic life, laid bare in ink and parchment. The script is exquisite. Brother Etienne's hand, delicate yet sure, the illuminated letters shine in lapis and gold, their vines twisting into dragons, saints, lilies. You sew the gatherings together, folding each section carefully, piercing the holes with steady hands. The thread runs through your fingers like veins. You hum beneath your breath as you work. Not melody, just tone. It steadies your focus. It steadies your soul. As the book grows, the room seems to narrow. The walls recede. Time bends. You forget the hunger, the bells, the cold. Only the vellum matters. The grain of it, the scent of stretched skin, the softness of cloth pressed to spine. You bind, not just pages, but prayers. Not just a book, but a life. You remember Brother Lucian. You remember his whisper, "Don't forget to live." And here in this moment, with thread and glue and gold leaf, you feel for the first time in months alive. You run your fingers along the final folio. The letters shimmer. Domine, dirige nos. Lord, guide. You place the cover thick leather, dyed red, corners trimmed in brass, and press it gently into the spine. You wrap the book in cloth and weigh it down beneath a stone, letting the bindings settle. That night, you dream not of silence or ash, but of words. Illuminated words, dancing across an endless sky. Prayers floating like fireflies. Pages turning in the wind. In the morning, the book is complete. You carry it to the prior's chamber, held against your chest as one might carry a child. He opens it, turns a few pages, nods without speaking. Then, just once, he meets your eyes. You have done good work. You bow again. But the warmth of that sentence lingers far longer than the moment deserves. Later you return to the scriptorium and sit at the now empty bench. Your hands feel strange, not aching, but restless. You miss the vellum. You miss the book. You realize you loved it, not as a task, not as an obligation, but as a creation, a shaping of something holy from things that were once flesh, once wild, once lived. You stare at your ink-stained fingers, and for the first time in a long time, you smile. The bells begin before dawn, softer than usual, almost hesitant, as if unsure whether to wake the world. You stir beneath your threadbare blanket, cold still coiled in the corners of your cell, but something stirs in you too. A flicker, a warmth. You rise not out of duty, but with a sense of expectancy you haven't felt in many months. Outside, the monastery breathes a strange stillness. The stone is damp with dew, and the wind carries the scent of thaw, of wet soil, loosened moss, last year's leaves, giving way. The long fast is nearly ended. The chapel glows. Candles burn in the dark, their flames reflected in every polished surface. Gold glints from the crucifix. The Paschal candle rises like a pillar in the nave, carved and waxen, its light dancing on the cold flagstones beneath your feet. The monks stand in rows, robes patched and clean, eyes still shadowed by winter. But something is different today. Something is softer in their silence. You take your place. The chant begins, not solemn, not mournful, but bright. You hadn't known voices could lift like that. After so many months of grief and hunger, the sound rises like mist warming into sunlight. Resurrexit, sica dixit. He is risen, as he said. The Latin tastes sweet on your tongue, though you've spoken it all year. Today it feels alive. Incense thickens the air, curls around the arches. The scent is sharp and holy. You breathe it deep. It reminds you of the garden, of damp soil, and rosemary, of Brother Anselm, who has not yet returned to his bed beneath the trees. A child's memory breaks the surface. Your mother, lighting a candle at a village shrine, whispering a prayer for a good harvest. Her lips moved quickly. Her eyes shone with something that wasn't fear, but wasn't peace either. Hope, maybe, or desperation shaped into reverence. You think of her now, of all the people beyond these walls who mark this morning with feast and wine and open laughter. And yet, you do not envy them, because here, in this dark stone chapel, you have found something quieter. A light you hadn't expected, not blinding, not joyful, but steady, calm. At dawn, the doors of the chapel are opened for the first time in months. Cold air rushes in, scented with earth and sap, and distant fires. You walk outside with the others, blinking into the pale gold of morning. The sun crests the hills like a blessing. For a moment, the cloister is no longer a cage. It is a cradle. You walk the garden path alone, your feet pressing into thawed soil. The mint has returned, small and green and defiant. You kneel beside it, run your fingers over its leaves. It smells of life. Back in your cell, you unwrap the lavender pouch from beneath your bedding. The scent is faded now, nearly gone. You do not replace it. You let it rest in your palm, then set it on the windowsill, where the light might find it. You sit cross-legged on the floor, your hands in your lap, and listen to the bells. They do not ring for morning today. They ring for rising. You find them tucked behind a loose plank in the sacristy. While dusting the lowest shelves of altar linens, the plank shifts beneath your palm, revealing a hollow space, dry, secret, untouched by the damp breath of time. Inside, a stack of folded parchment, bound with twine so brittle it flakes beneath your fingers. You look around. The sacristy is empty. The hour is late. You untie the knot. The letters are old, not crumbling, but yellowed at the edges. The ink faded to a soft sepia, like dried blood. You unfold one. The script is elegant, careful, clearly monastic. It begins, "To my sister, whom I have not seen in 22 winters." You sit. The letter is simple, a quiet recollection of home, of a stream that froze in perfect silence, of bread baked with rosemary, of a mother's laughter once lost to illness. The monk writes not in lament, but in longing, not for escape, but for remembrance. You read another. "I have come to know God in the silence, but some days I miss the sound of my own name." And another. "Do you think the soul grows smaller here, or deeper?" Each letter is a fragment, a breath of someone once vibrant, now dust. None are addressed formally. None bear replies. Some are folded with care. Others smeared with what might have been tears. They span decades, generations of monks, all speaking into a silence that never answered. You do not report the letters. Instead, you hide them again, gently, wrapping them in cloth before returning the plank to its place. But their voices stay with you. They cling to your robe as you walk the cloister. They whisper in the margins of your prayer. That night, you do not sleep. You rise, light a candle, and unroll a sheet of parchment on your desk. You begin to write. "I do not know who will read this. Perhaps no one. But tonight, I cannot bear to keep it inside. Your hand trembles as you write of the garden, of Brother Anselm's herbs, of Matteo's humming, of Lucian's final breath. You write of the bells and the cold, of the beauty you sometimes glimpse in candlelight on stone. You write of memory, how it fades and burns, how it returns like spring through frost. You write until your fingers ache, and then you fold the page. You hold it in your hands for a long time. You consider sending it, but there is no one to send it to. So you place it in the same hollow behind the plank among the others. And as you press the wood back into place, you feel something inside you shift. Not sorrow, not peace. Something older. The knowledge that you are not the only one who remembers. The next morning, as you carry a tray of bread to the refectory, Brother Etienne brushes past you and murmurs, almost too soft to hear. Sometimes we must speak, even if no one is listening. You say nothing, but that night, you write again. And this time you burn it. In the brazier, ash curling upward like prayer. The visitor arrives near dusk, his cloak damp with spring rain, his eyes wide with unfamiliar quiet. He is young, not a boy, but not yet formed by age. His boots are caked with mud, and his hands bear calluses, not yet healed from the work of the world. He stands at the monastery gate in silence, lips parted as if unsure whether to speak or retreat. You are sent to meet him. He bows his head when you approach. I've come to consider the life, he says, voice low, uncertain, to see if I belong here. You nod. You remember that voice, that trembling. You lead him through the cloister. He walks slowly, eyes moving over the stone walls, the archways, the fading frescoes. He touches the wooden door to the chapel, as if it might open itself. You do not rush him. Later, you find him in the garden. The mint has grown wild since Brother Anselm's passing. The boy kneels beside it, rubbing a leaf between his fingers. The scent lingers on the air, sharp, green, alive. He looks up when you approach. Did you ever regret it, he asks softly, choosing this? The question settles between you like fog. You sit beside him. For a long moment, you do not answer. Then you say, I didn't choose it. Not really. I ran from something, and when I got here, I mistook the silence for peace. He nods. And now? Now, you say, I think the silence was waiting for me to listen. He looks down. But, doesn't it hurt? You smile. Yes, but not in the way I feared. The bells begin to ring. Sext. A long, low note that drifts across the courtyard. The visitor doesn't move. I don't know if I can live without laughter, he says. You glance toward the chapel. You will still hear laughter, you say, but never your own. He winces. I'm not sure I'm ready to vanish, he admits. You reach into your robe and pull a small sprig of rosemary, one you cut earlier in the day. You hand it to him. For remembrance, you say. He takes it gently, presses it to his lips. Then he stands. That evening you watch from the cloister as he walks down the long path away from the abbey. His shoulders are squared, his pace slow but steady. He does not look back. You turn and return to the garden. You kneel beside the rosemary bush, hands in the soil. You do not regret staying, but a part of you mourns that he will not. That night, during Compline, the chant feels thinner. You add your voice, and somewhere in your chest, where memory still dwells, you feel a tenderness that is not grief, and not joy, only witness. The wood of the bell rope is smooth now, worn by hands long turned to ash. You pull it gently, each morning before matins, feeling its weight descend through your shoulder like a memory being wrung from the spine. The bell above responds with its great iron breath, slow, sonorous, certain. It does not ask. It summons. And still, they come. Even now, even after so many seasons have stripped this place bare, even as the roof leaks in the transept, and the east wall sheds stone like flaking parchment, the bell rings, and the monks gather, fewer now. The line is thinner. Some were taken by sickness, some by age, others simply gone. The novices no longer come. The scriptorium stands mostly quiet. Only Brother Etienne remains there most days, copying fragments of psalms with a hand that trembles more than it used to. The ink stains his sleeves, and sometimes when he lifts his eyes, they seem unfocused, like someone remembering a story without its ending. The garden has gone wild. Rosemary sprawls like a secret longing. Mint spreads like moss. The elder tree leans, half dead, its branches still reaching, though no longer blooming. You tend it when you can, but your knees are slower now. Your back stiffens with every season. Still you kneel, still you weed. The chapel smells of wax and mildew. Rainwater pools beneath the pews after storms. The hymnals grow thinner as pages fade or crumble, but the light, the morning light, still filters through the same narrow windows, painting gold across the stone at dawn, like God pressing his palm against the world. Sometimes you climb the bell tower at dusk. From there the fields unfold in quiet waves, the path winding away like a thread, no longer pulled. You see the village far beyond, smoke curling gently from its hearths. You wonder if the blacksmith's house still stands, if laughter still echoes in the orchard, if anyone remembers the boy who left with a satchel and a silence too large for his body. The monastery is quieter now, but it is not dead. The rule still rests in the chapter house, its pages thin from use, corners dog-eared by fingers lost to time. You open it sometimes, not to read, you know it by heart, but to feel its weight, its texture. It is more than ink now. It is the breath between every bell. A storm comes one night, and the bell rope frays. You repair it with twine and wax, your fingers clumsy, but careful. The next morning, it rings again, and for a moment, as the sound carries out over the fields, you think you hear an echo that doesn't come from the hills. You think of Matteo, of Anselm, of Lucian, of Brother Aldrich, the traveller who left no footprint. You think of the letters, folded in their hidden space, pressed together like voices in a crowded tomb. And still, the bell rings. You do not know how much longer the abbey will stand. The roof needs repair. The walls crack like old skin. The young no longer come. But the silence still gathers at vespers. And when you chant slower now, quieter, you do not fear the sound of your voice. You do not regret what it became. Because in these echoes, in these walls, in these pages, you are not alone. You are a breath in a centuries-long prayer. And the bells ring on. You rise before dawn, as always. The motion is slow now, deliberate. Each joint speaks in hushed protest, each muscle remembering colder winters and harder floors. The candle flickers as you light it, your hands careful, reverent. You have done this thousands of times, yet this morning it feels final. Not as an end, but as a closing of something that had been open too long. You wash in silence. Dress in silence. Walk the corridor with the same quiet steps, though your balance sways with age. The stone beneath your feet is smooth from years of passage. Not just yours, but theirs. All of them. The ones who came before. The ones whose names live only in the registers. Or not at all. The bells ring. But you no longer climb to pull them. Brother Etienne rings them now. He is slower too. You heard him coughing last week behind the cloister wall. The same kind of cough that once echoed from Brother Lucian's bed. Still, he climbs. Still, the bell tolls. You kneel in the chapel, the candlelight dancing on the stone. The chant begins. You open your mouth, but the sound that comes is not voice. It is breath, a rasp like wind through reeds. You no longer have the strength to sing, but you move your lips. The words are still there, they always will be. After prime, you sit in the garden. The rosemary has grown tall and wild, climbing the stones like ivy. The mint has choked the pathway. You do not tend it now. You let it grow. A small rebellion, perhaps, or simply the grace of age. A robin flits from the branch of the elder tree. You watch it move, its head jerking with quick precision. Life in miniature. You smile. Later, you return to your cell. The walls are bare now. Even the lavender pouch has lost its scent. But the wood smells faintly of wax and time. You lie on your mat, pull the thin blanket to your chest, and rest your hands above your ribs. Your thoughts drift. Not to heaven, not to theology, but to a morning long ago, when you first stood at this door with a satchel and too much fear in your lungs. You remember your own voice, your own name. You remember her laughter, Matteo's humming, Lucian's final breath, Aldrich's strange smile beneath the stars, Anselm's hands in the soil, Etienne's trembling quill, the letters never sent. You are no saint, you are not wise, but you lived. You endured the silence until it no longer frightened you. And now, as your breath slows, you speak once more, not aloud, but inward. Thank you. The wind sighs against the shutter. The candle dims, and the bells ring again, faintly, distantly, as if from some far hill. You do not rise. You do not answer. You are still. And in that stillness, at last, there is peace. As the final candle gutters in the chapel of this story, I thank you for walking its quiet halls. If it stirred something in your spirit, subscribe or share your thoughts below. I will be here, in the silence, waiting to tell the next tale. What part of this journey stayed with you most? As the final bell tolls and the last candle fades, I hope this quiet life has stirred your soul. If the silence of these stone walls spoke to you, subscribe, share, or leave a thought below. I'll be waiting for the next story, whispered in the shadows of history. Could you have endured a life where even joy was forbidden? Which part of this monk's journey stayed with you the most?